Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad.
Hello, people! Welcome to another exciting episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And oh boy, do I have quite a massive filled episode for you all today. And the only thing that I can truly say about the stories that we are going to be covering today is just brace yourselves. Because never have I seen in a week where there is so much entertainment news that is just filled with controversy. And yes, a lot of these are actually animation filled. And of course, some of these do reflect upon what is happening within the real world as well. So there really is a lot to go and talk about. So this could end up becoming a pretty big episode. So once again, in terms of the context of what I will be talking about, and in terms of how much it will be talked about, the only thing I can really say is just brace yourselves. So with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to go and ask you all, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? So let me hear it. Are you all ready, folks? Let's see now. Alright, are some people ready? Alright, that's nice. Yes, people are saying yes. Alright, that's good. People are prepared. People are ready. That is great to hear. So with all that said and done, it is now time that we are gonna go and get this one started. And with the first story that I have for you today, this is actually something that started this week off. So this was pretty much the story that actually launched this week in terms of the madness that would follow. Now, at first, when I have heard about this news, I didn't really think much of it. I looked at this, I was like, okay, and then I moved on with my day. But then, when I saw the reactions on social media, like what people are saying on Facebook and on Twitter and stuff like that, oh boy, this is much bigger than I thought. Like, this is the kind of news that I was not expecting it to blow up as big as it did. I did not expect that people would express such strong emotions regarding what has happened. And what I am talking about, of course, shall be regarding the whole controversy with Elmer Fudd's gun. Yes, in an interview with the New York Times, the executive producer of the new Looney Tunes cartoons on HBO Max, Peter Braungard, has openly expressed a rule with the new Looney Tunes cartoons that Elmer Fudd, and I believe Yosemite Sam as well, are no longer allowed to go and carry guns. And, however, he has stated that even though there would no longer be any guns, there is still a good amount of cartoon violence that will be featured on the new cartoons. To read you from my source here on Deadline, he would go and state that we're not doing guns, said Peter Braungard, executive producer of the series, in an interview with the New York Times, but we can do cartoony violence, TNT, the Acme stuff, and all that kind of fun gags. So, you might be wondering, okay, now that Elmer Fudd would no longer have his gun, does that mean he's no longer going to be a hunter? Well, not exactly. There will be cartoons where he'll still go after Bugs Bunny as a hunter, but instead of using a gun, they stated that they will switch that with a scythe. Which is kind of a hilarious image if you do think about it, because now we were gonna imagine Elmer Fudd just walking around, like just saying like, shh, be very, very quiet. I am the bringer of death. Ha! Oh my god. Honestly, I hope they really do play a lot with the scythe. Like, not only acknowledge it, but just Elmer Fudd embracing the scythe as a hunter. That would honestly be great. But anyways, going back to what I was talking about, of course, considering that they are still keeping the cartoony violence, that is a part of the main goal with the new Looney Tunes cartoons, is that they still want to go and stay true to the classic Looney Tunes of the past, like back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and so on. He would continue by stating that we're not doing... whoops, nope, wrong one. It's right here, actually, the one underneath. It says, I always thought, what if Warner Brothers had never stopped making Looney Tunes cartoons? As much as we possibly could, we treated the production in that way. And he still reflected upon modern sensibilities, in which it is said here, we're going through this wave of anti-bullying. Everyone needs to be friends. Everyone needs to get along. Looney Tunes is pretty much the antithesis of that. It's two characters in conflict, sometimes getting pretty violent. And he has stated before where there are some times where the violence can get a little extreme to the point that it is questionable if he would even go and release that on HBO Max, and maybe he would go and find another option to go and release it somewhere else if it gets a little too extreme. So that's a little bit of a hint of what could set the tone in the upcoming episodes of the new Looney Tunes cartoons. So with that said and done, that's pretty much the big thing that everybody's been emphasizing. In fact, when you would go and look up all the headlines about it, that's what they all go and state, that Elmer Fudd and possibly even Yosemite Sam no longer have their guns in the new Looney Tunes cartoons. And from there, like, as I stated before, the internet just pretty much exploded when they heard about that. Like, some were cool with it, and some were massively upset, and of course doing their usual rants about political correctness going too far and all that stuff. And I mean, there is a part of me that does see why there is a huge amount of frustration going on because of this news, mainly because of the iconography of Elmer Fudd. Because when you do think of Elmer Fudd, you think of him as a hunter. That's kind of the thing that he is most well known for. He is the gullible and sometimes dim-witted hunter, always trying to go after Bugs Bunny, but always fails to do so. That's kind of his main shtick. In fact, some of the most popular cartoons ever done by the Looney Tunes, and some of the most beloved cartoons of all time, do feature Elmer Fudd as a hunter. Case in point, you take a look at the Hunting Trilogy. And if you don't know what the Hunting Trilogy is, that is a set of 3 cartoons, all directed by Chuck Jones, in which they all share a very similar theme, or a very similar format, where Elmer Fudd is going out hunting, and you got Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck trying to outsmart each other to make Elmer Fudd shoot the other, which would always end up with Bugs Bunny outsmarting Elmer Fudd to shoot Daffy Duck. And of course, it's because of the Hunting Trilogy where you get the world-famous duck season, rabbit season joke. So it's the trilogy is some of the most iconic cartoons of all time, and some of the most iconic Looney Tunes cartoons that perfectly present and describe these individual characters. Like, it perfectly describes Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck after he would go loony, and Elmer Fudd. So that's the big thing, is that Elmer Fudd as, like, the gun-shooting hunter is very iconic. However, there is one big question now that Elmer Fudd has lost his gun, and that is regarding, what if you take away the gun from Elmer Fudd? What do you end up with? Well, the answer, if you know your Looney Tunes, is that you still get Elmer Fudd. The thing is that many people seem to have forgotten that there have been several instances where Elmer Fudd never had his gun at all. And I don't mean the modern stuff that we have nowadays. I mean the stuff from the golden age of cartoons as well. There have been a lot of cartoons where we would see Elmer Fudd without his gun. And I don't necessarily mean Elmer Fudd switching roles where, like, he is far from the hunter that we know him trying to chase Bugs Bunny. No. There are some episodes where Elmer Fudd would go and chase Bugs Bunny without his gun. It has happened. And Elmer Fudd is still Elmer Fudd. The gun doesn't make him a whole person, like, the gun doesn't give him all of his personality. It doesn't describe everything about him. Like, he could still not have his gun, and you could still recognize Elmer Fudd being Elmer Fudd. And if you don't believe me, I know the perfect example that could pretty much prove that. And it is what many people consider to be the greatest cartoon of all time. And I'm talking, of course, of What's Opera Doc. Now, I'm sure if you are watching this, you are more than familiar with What's Opera Doc. You know very well the cartoon. You've probably have seen it before. I mean, if you are an animation fan, it's almost like mandatory to check this out because, like I said, many people have stated this to be the greatest, not one of, but the greatest cartoon of all time. And throughout this whole thing, never once did he actually have a gun. Now, of course, they switched the theme to make it more opera, but still, it's the same thing, where instead of a gun, now he actually has a spear and a magic helmet. And yet, you don't see these people all riled up and angry about this news, and like they never ranted about the old cartoons where Elmer Fudd didn't have a gun. In fact, I've seen several people say this. In fact, I think it was animation historian Jerry Beck who said it best, that if these people really are angry about Elmer Fudd no longer having his gun, then why are they not upset about cartoons like What's Opera Doc, where they didn't show him with his gun? And that really does emphasize the big thing about this whole controversy. It's not really about the cartoons, and it's not really about Elmer Fudd. The reason why you see so many people get so emotionally invested in this, and why they are taking it more personally than they probably should, is mainly because this touches the subject of gun rights. That's why this is a little bit more of a, what people would say on the internet, a more political subject matter. Because it is true that it has been more and more of a taboo subject. And there are people out there, like people who believe in gun rights, or people who are often referred to as Second Amendment people, who think that having a gun means everything. That having a gun is pretty much a part of their personality. It's a part of who they are. They think that owning a gun is like an essential in life, where you need food, water, shelter, and a gun, for some reason, in order to live. And on top of that, like, there are also a lot of people, especially in America, who believe that having a gun is considered patriotic, where they think that having a, like, the rifle or the gun is as symbolic as the bald eagle or apple pie. Like, they think, like, to be a true American, you gotta have a gun and you gotta shoot down some deer and stuff like that. Like, hunting is often viewed as, like, an all-American sport, or as a patriotic sport and stuff like that. So you do have those people that are so personally attached to their guns. However, in this day and age, and as time has moved on recently, the gun, as I said before, has become more and more and more of a taboo subject, especially when mass shootings have unfortunately become a lot more common, where there have been times where it almost felt like on a regular weekly or even daily basis that you would hear in the news that there's some far-right Trump-supporting maniac that's going around in public areas shooting people, resulting in several deaths, which is very unfortunate. And it's not just in America where you see these far-right maniacs shooting people, but you would also have, like, other places around the world. In fact, a few weeks ago, or I think more than a month ago, there's a psychopath in Nova Scotia, I believe, either Newfoundland or Nova Scotia, but anyways, there's this one guy who ended up setting houses on fire, and as the people were leaving their homes, there would be this maniac that would go and shoot them as they're running out to save their lives. But no, they ended up getting shot, which is a very tragic and very unfortunate moment, like one of the darkest periods of 2020 in Canada so far. So may the victims of them rest in peace. But my point is that the gun has become more and more of a taboo subject, and because of these mass shootings becoming more common, there are, of course, a lot more people demanding for gun reform. That something needs to be done, including banning assault rifles or military-grade assault weapons to be owned by civilians, because, let's be honest, there are some massive and large artillery that no common person should ever go and own, and especially, like, when it comes to these Second Amendment people people, it's very hypocritical that they would own all these guns, yet they are too scared to go and serve to the army. Trust me, as many guns as they would love to own, a lot of these people are way too scared to die for their country. But the point that I am making is that it has become more of a taboo subject where people are demanding for gun reform, they are demanding for more gun control, especially in America, which leads to these Second Amendment people and these gun rights people to become a little bit more paranoid when it comes to having their guns, because they always have this fear that they would lose their guns, that there's going to be one day someone will come in and take their guns away and they'll feel completely defenseless. Like, their gun is kind of like their weapon of choice, and they view that as as their item in order to go and protect their family and to protect their country and all that kind of stuff. So they're always in that paranoia state, no matter what. Whenever they hear someone or something is losing their guns, or that there will be less guns present, it makes them worried and it makes them fear for their guns, that one day those guns will be lost. And that's why this controversy has gotten far bigger than, debatably, than it ever should be. And honestly, when you do think of those reasons, when you do think about the gun violence implementing onto the reasons why they had to remove them in the new Looney Tunes cartoons, then personally, I feel like, you know what? That honestly makes perfect sense. Then it's honestly perfectly understandable, because it would be extremely awkward if you would see in the news that there is another mass shooting going on in America, and then afterwards you would switch onto the Looney Tunes cartoons where there's a new episode where you see Elmer Fudd shooting Daffy Duck in the face. Now, I know that at this point there are some people that might question it, and they might have a bit of objections to this. Like, one of the most common ones that I have seen is regarding the violence aspect, that they felt like it is very hypocritical for the new Looney Tunes cartoons to get rid of Elmer Fudd and possibly Yosemite Sam's gun, yet they would go and keep all the other violence that are intact. That they would keep the violence like all the dynamites and the anvils and all the boulders and, you know, and all the punches and the hits and all that kind of stuff. They feel like it's very hypocritical to keep all those other cartoony violences, but not the gun. But again, it's not about the violence itself, it's about the gun violence. The thing is, the big difference with all the other forms of violence that you would find on the Looney Tunes is that you don't often see these forms of violence be an epidemic in America or in other places around the world. You don't see mass murders happen with the kind of Looney Tunes violence that you would see in the cartoons. I mean, let's be real. When was the last time that you have heard people throwing sticks of dynamite and blowing people up? When is it the last time that you've heard a maniac trying to drop anvils on people's heads? When is it the last time you heard someone trying to commit an act of terrorism by pushing a giant boulder off a cliff? That's my point. The thing is, these cartoony violence are not common in real life, but gun violence unfortunately is. And the thing with the Looney Tunes cartoons is that they are discouraging that kind of violence in real life, and that's why they are not showing it. It's not really the factor of like the violence in general. It's the factor of realism, because it really, like, the thing is, watching gun violence happen on TV, yeah, it could happen when you would go and see that be referenced or be imitated in real life. Now, I know, like, some people might object to me saying that, thinking like, oh, this is the same argument as violent, like violence, like video games causing violence and stuff like that. But that's not really the case. It's about the gun violence itself. The gun is the problem. It's not the cartoons or anything like that. It's more to discourage actual gun violence. That's kind of like the big goal here. So with that said, honestly, like, with this whole argument, there is something that I do need to go and immediately say with the people who are who do object and are upset about the news that Elmer Fudd has lost his gun in the new cartoons and stuff like that. And there is something important that I need to go and state in order to clear out like all the variety of opinions that are stated about this. One major thing that I would like to go and say is that if you are someone who has never seen a single episode of the new Looney Tunes cartoons, and yet you are still upset that Elmer Fudd has lost his gun, then obviously your opinion is immediately invalid. It does not exist. It doesn't matter what you say, because obviously you have not done the proper research in order to go and understand the whole situation. You're just coming in blind, and obviously you just want to be angry for the sake of being angry on the internet. So whatever you say, I don't care, because the thing is, if you haven't watched any of the new cartoons, then it really doesn't matter what you think. But also, at the same time, I would like to go and state that if you do watch the new episodes, if you have seen the new episodes of the Looney Tunes cartoons, and never once have you ever noticed that Elmer Fudd never had his gun before the news broke out, then honestly, you're immediately on the side that it's no big deal. Because, let's be honest, is it really that big of a deal that when you have never noticed it when you are watching the cartoons? Is it really that big of a deal? And honestly, like with all this, like with all the different reactions that have occurred, it really has highlighted once again a real problem with people complaining about political correctness. Now, this is something that it's not the first time that it has happened before. Of course, I remember seeing this happen again with the whole Apu controversy, when Apu was threatened to be taken out from The Simpsons and all that kind of stuff. Because the big problem, the big problem in general, when people would go and complain about political correctness, especially regarding subject matters such as this, is that they would go and completely exaggerate the problem. Like, they always go and make it so much bigger as it is. Because the way that they are framing it, they think that this doesn't just apply to the new cartoons, but also somehow that it would apply to the old cartoons as well. That somehow this would mean that, oh, because Elmer Fudd no longer has his gun, they are no longer allowed to go and see the old cartoons. That somehow they'll no longer see any of the cartoons, and even the classic ones, that Elmer Fudd would have his gun, and people are wondering, oh, well, now how will they do the rabbit season, duck season joke, and all that kind of stuff, which could not be further from the truth. It's not like that, folks. It really is not like that. The thing is, with this controversy right here, this only applies to the new stuff. This only applies to the new Looney Tunes cartoons. In fact, on HBO Max, you can still go and see many of the classic cartoons where Elmer Fudd does have his gun, including Rabbit of Seville. I know that Rabbit of Seville is on HBO Max, so you can still go and check that out, and you'll see that Elmer Fudd will still have his gun. And the thing is, and you know what's the craziest thing about it, is that this has already happened. What many people don't seem to know is that Elmer Fudd never had his gun. Even Yosemite Sam, like both of those guys, never had their guns in the new Looney Tunes stuff for years. In fact, I've seen many people have stated that ever since the new the Looney Tunes show back in 2011, that Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam, they never really had their guns. And even with the Wabbit show, like, they never had, again, like, when Yosemite Sam would appear in them, he never really had his gun. Or, like, almost never. Like, maybe there was a moment or something like that, but, like, if he did, it was extremely, extremely rare. And yet, you never hear people complain about those. You never hear people complain that Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam never actually had their guns at all. And yet, the thing is that you want to know why this is controversial? You know what? You want to know why, like, a lot of people are talking about this? It's mainly because of the fact that Peter Braungart brought it up. It's simple as that. I can guarantee you for a fact that if Peter Braungart had never said anything about it, if he never said that Elmer Fudd and possibly Yosemite Sam would not have their guns in the new Looney Tunes cartoons, then no one would notice. No one would have said anything about it, and they would continue watching the Looney Tunes cartoons as they would go and move on. Because again, the grand majority that are complaining, the grand majority of people who are upset about Elmer Fudd not having his gun are people who have not seen the cartoons and mainly just want to go and add fuel to the fire of trying to demonize political correctness to make it much worse than it actually is. Now, I'm not saying that political correctness is all good, it's all perfect. It does have it does have its problems, of course, but people always seem to exaggerate how bad it is. They completely want to show it as like a real problem. Like they want to show it as like something that's completely corrupting and destroying our society when in reality, it's not really. And, yeah, that's honestly the big thing that I want to emphasize is that overall, it's no big deal of the fact that Elmer Fudd didn't really have his gun. Just because Elmer Fudd or Yosemite Sam don't have their guns, that doesn't mean they lose all their personality. That doesn't mean they're no longer themselves. They could still be themselves with or without their guns. It's not the weapon that makes the character, it's the personality that makes the character. And if you think having a gun, like if you think that it is essential for Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam to have a gun for them to be themselves, then you know nothing about the Looney Tunes and you know nothing about these characters. Again, the gun is nothing more but an object. It's the personalities that make them the characters that we all know and love for decades. And even if they would no longer have guns for generations to come, they will still be recognized as the same Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam as they were back in the classic cartoons. And there is one more thing that I would like to go and comment about this. There's just one more thing that I would like to say to go and cap off this little piece right here. And it's just the fact that, folks, you gotta keep in mind that at the end of the day, it's just a frickin' cartoon. Okay, there's no need to blow your lid over a certain character not having a specific weapon. Come on, that is just petty. In fact, this would be categorized as full-on first world problems. And especially the fact that we are in 2020, there are much worse things that are going on in the world that are actually costing human lives. Like right now, you know why there are protests going on all around the world. Mainly because the grand majority of people know for a fact that there is a systemic racism that is corrupting our society that might as well be interpreted as white supremacy, which would go and not only encourage white supremacy, but would also go and encourage police brutality so that the police can go and even go as far as murder people of color like George Floyd and Breonna, what was her name? Breonna Davis, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I do apologize if I don't have her name right, but no, Breonna Taylor, sorry. And Breonna Taylor as well. So you got all that is happening, and even with the protests, the people, you still got the police still, committing violence, and, you got far-right activists that are trying to go as far as, troll the police to, encourage the violence as well, and all that while they are trying to go and pin the blame on the mythical Antifa or the radical left and all that kind of stuff. And plus the fact that we are still in the middle of the pandemic. We are still in the middle of the whole COVID-19 pandemic. It has not gone away, and yet you still get ignorant white privileged people that are going as far as not only ignore it, but flat out be stubborn to refuse to follow of any of the health and safety guidelines, like just simply wearing a mask or social distancing. They would purposely try to break those rules because they just want to do what they want to do, and that would end up making things worse, which is why right now the United States is the epicenter of the world of the virus, because there are too many stupid far-right white people that refuse to listen. And that's the big thing that I'm trying to emphasize here. If Elmer Fudd, and the point is, if Elmer Fudd not having his gun, a fictional cartoon character not having a specific weapon, a specific object like a gun, upsets you more than the systematic racism in our society, more so than the police brutality that is happening all around the world, and also, if it angers you more than the stubborn white privileged people that are not following COVID-19 rules that are making things worse for the pandemic, then honestly, it really shows that your white privileges or your first world privileges is making you mentally challenged. Like, seriously, you need to rethink about your life decisions and reorganize your frickin' priorities, man. It doesn't frickin' matter, especially if you haven't seen the cartoons. Like, at the end of the day, like, if this really does upset you, then all you have to do is just watch the cartoons for yourself and see how things are. You can have whatever opinion you want about the Looney Tunes cartoons, but at the end of the day, like, just see for yourself if Elmer Fudd is still Elmer Fudd, even without a gun, man. At the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. It's not worth freaking out or blowing your top over, especially nowadays when there are more serious issues happening in the world. At least Elmer Fudd not having his gun, at least that's not killing lives, okay? This is not a decision that's killing lives, is what I'm trying to say here. Okay, woo! Now that's a pretty big piece. So with all that said and done, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all regarding what do you think about Elmer Fudd not having his gun in the new Looney Tunes cartoons. Do you think that he should have his gun? Do you think that he's better off without it? Do you think it's a big deal? Do you think it's not? Let me know what you think. Okay, so, where is it? Okay, there we go. Let's see. It's like if Infinity Ward decided to change. There are no Russian mission from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, but replace the gun with cartoon hammers, or take out the grenades and replace them with soda bottles. And the no Russian mission do cause World War 3 and Modern Warfare 3. And I don't know what Infinity War we're gonna do to Russian okay, honestly, I'm kind of at a loss. Like, you're just going all over the place with, like, Modern Warfare. I mean, I've only played, like, the first Modern Warfare, and that's it. Okay, like, you kind of lost me with that whole thing of what you're trying to say. Okay, let's see. I see both sides of this controversy, but I'm willing to shrug it off, as this is yet another example of the internet creating the mountain out of a molehill. Have we entered Wonderland yet? A Wonderland where the universe is ass backwards. Yeah, that's the big thing, is that, honestly, you really did hit the nail right in the head, is that regardless of where you would stand on this position, at the end of the day, it shouldn't necessarily be that big of a deal, because at the end of the day, we are just talking about a freaking cartoon. So it doesn't, like, really, regardless if they decide to keep his gun or not, it shouldn't necessarily matter. It doesn't, like, no gun, like, honestly, the lack of guns doesn't mean that the Looney Tunes aren't going to be the same as they used to. Let's see now. I am not upset about the removal of Elmer's signature gun, given that he was a villain without even using one every now and then, even in the classic era. I'm still pretty upset with My Little Pony having villains like Discord or Starlight Glimmer committed cataclysmic crimes without being held accountable, though. Yeah, but that's My Little Pony's problem. Alright, let's see what else. With everything that's been going on with all these protests, it's understandable why Warner Brothers would make this decision to remove guns, not just from Looney Tunes, but the cartoons in general, so I think they made the right call in doing this. Okay, no. Okay, the thing is, yeah, it's a right call in order to do this, but the thing is that this decision over here has nothing to do with the recent protests. Okay, because there is a bit of like a misnomer, like some misinformation being spread that some people believe that this decision was done mainly because of the Black Lives Matter protests, which if you really do believe that, then it really does mean that you know nothing about the animation process whatsoever. I mean, the animators at Warner Brothers Animation has been working on this for like years, and this is long before any of the protests have occurred, so it's not because of any recent recent events that's causing all this. Alright, so, let's see now. I get that the gun is a major factor in Elmer's character, but honestly, I could care less. I never care much for the Elmer Fudd shorts aside from, do I even need to say it? So, I'm not going to be crying myself to sleep about it. I will say, however, that it would be pretty clever if Elmer Fudd had a short where he questioned the existence about his gun. Yeah, you never know, maybe. I know that the Looney Tunes have done that before, like, not necessarily in cartoons, but I think in comics as well, like, to bring up that issue about guns and stuff like that, but I don't know, I guess it really is the Looney Tunes, it really is Warner Brothers' call if they even want to go and fully acknowledge about the guns in general, but, we'll see. Honestly, what I would love to see is Elmer Fudd just enjoying his scythe. Like, I don't know. I want to see Elmer Fudd preferring his scythe more so than the gun. Just having fun with his scythe and, like, pretending to be death and stuff like that. You know, that would actually be clever. That would actually be fun. Let's see. These people just want to shift their anger on something so pathetic as a cartoon. Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam has always been violent with or without guns. So what the hell are you all complaining about? This is for the best since we live in a world seeing gun violence is the norm and the last thing we need is more guns along with police brutality. We should be lucky that the new show is still using dynamite after 70 plus years. Well, yeah, exactly. It's no big deal, folks. Let's see. Did I read? Oh, I haven't read this one. Okay. Honestly, I could really care less, cause the only cartoon where I feel Elmer having a gun, ever mattered, were the ones where he plays off against Bugs and Daffy. That's it. So basically the Hunting trilogy. So this whole ordeal isn't the worst thing ever happened, just a minor change that can be easily dealt with. Oh my god, you really did hit the nail on the head. Let's see now, where else can we have? I wasn't too sure how to feel about this when I first heard about it, despite how much I don't like guns, but hearing your take on it helps me understand that this is no big deal. I don't have HBO Max myself, but if I ever get it, I'm sure I'd enjoy the new Elmer Fudd stuff if I saw it. And yeah, I think honestly that would go and conclude this thing. Like, you could disagree with me, you can agree with me, or whatever, but at the end of the day, I think the only way that you can truly solve this is by watching the new Looney Tunes cartoons yourself on HBO Max. And that way, you will truly see for yourself if Elmer Fudd is still Elmer Fudd, or if Yosemite Sam is Yosemite Sam without their guns, and if the cartoons do work even without the guns. So that's really the big thing. And I think, honestly, like, no matter which side you're in, that's what I encourage you all to do. Just go and watch Looney Tunes cartoons. Because otherwise, if you just want to go and complain about something without actually doing the proper research yourself to see if things can actually work without the gun, then honestly, you just have to shut up. Okay, so with that said and done, it is now time that I will go and jump onto the next story. And with the next story, we're still going to be staying in the realm of HBO Max, but it will be a bonus miscellaneous. It is not going to be an animation-related subject, but it is actually still very fascinating to go and talk about. Because like I said when talking about Elmer Fudd and his guns and the old cartoons, at least you can go and still check them out. Regardless if it would be either on HBO Max, or you can go and see it either on YouTube, or even go and get them on DVD and Blu-ray. You can actually go and get the Looney Tunes collection, and you can actually see plenty of cartoons with Elmer Fudd and his gun. But, with that said, you can agree, I think we can all agree, that it could have been much worse. It could have been worse. They could have done something like with Gone with the Wind. Oops. Oh, hold on a sec. Of course. Yeah, of course, with my browser, they wouldn't really show this article, so that's why I got my backup, so don't worry, folks. Yes, it is official. HBO Max has gotten rid of the 1939 cinematic classic Gone with the Wind from its streaming service. this actually occurred just less than 2 days when an article, or an opinion piece specifically, written by the screenwriter of 12 Years a Slave, John Ridley, wrote a piece in which it is called, "Hey HBO, Gone with the Wind romanticizes the horrors of slavery. Take it off of your platform now." And he would go and write down essentially the problems with Gone with the Wind, how it is very dated, how it depicts racial stereotypes, especially with black people, and especially normalizing black stereotypes and romanticizing slavery and Confederacy. So those are all major problems. I think we can pretty much all agree that, like, nowadays, I think it has been emphasized that, like, now with the protests, it has pretty much been proven that the Confederates are a much more violent and much more terrorist-like group, more so than whatever people would claim the radical left or Antifa would ever be. So the thing is that, yeah, nowadays it can certainly be viewed as a very problematic movie, which is why less than 2 days after that article was released, HBO Max decided to go and completely take that out of its streaming service. In fact, Warner Media, the company that owns HBO Max, has went on to go and state Gone with the Wind is a product of its time and depicts some of the ethnic and racial prejudices that have unfortunately been commonplace in American society. These racist depictions were wrong then and are wrong today, and we felt that to keep this title up without an explanation and denouncement of those depictions would be irresponsible. So, they have a solution to this, and it's not completely removing it off of its streaming service in general, because it will be coming back. It is not gone for good. It is only temporary that it is going to be out, because they have also announced that while there is no official date of when Gone with the Wind is going to be coming back, they will go and they did promise that they will bring it back to its streaming service, but they will also go and add a discussion of its historical context and a denouncement of those very depictions. And they did promise that when they will return it, they will show the movie in its true original form without any cuts or anything like that, while stating that the film will be presented as it was originally created, because otherwise it would be the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. And I'll be honest, when I first saw this, when I first heard of the news, it was only about the factor that HBO Max would just completely take it out of its streaming services. And honestly, that was at the point where even I was like, don't really know about that. Like, honestly, I would even go as far and say that I was a little bit upset about that decision. Now, the thing is that, yeah, I do see both sides of the whole discussion about Gone with the Wind in general. On one hand, it is one of the most important movies of all time, and when adjusted for inflation, it is the highest grossing movie of all time. So this is one of the most important movies that we have that has definitely revolutionized cinema as we know it. But then on the other hand, yes, it is very much outdated, and it very much is pretty uncomfortable to go and watch it nowadays, especially with all the racial racial depictions, with all the stereotypes that they are presenting, with the way that, like, it kind of the way that it presents, like, slavery and the Confederacy as something that is okay. So there are a lot of elements where it is pretty uncomfortable. I mean, we're talking about a movie that was made in 1939 that depicts the Civil War. And nowadays, that's kind of like a concoction of, like, of stuff that's just not okay nowadays. You know, that's just a concoction of ideologies that are not only outdated, but honestly pretty messed up when you're watching it. Most people nowadays would watch Gone with the Wind in horror instead of the way that they saw it back in 1939, where they're just amazed by it and completely in love with the actual romance that is going on with it and stuff like that. So I do see a little bit of the troubles, and I do see the cinematic importance, but I am most certainly on the side that this is not something that, because of the problems, that you should go and completely remove it entirely, like to completely give it the Song of the South treatment. That I am not okay with, because honestly, like on top of, actually, you know what, on top of that, like, that's something that just doesn't make sense to do nowadays, because that's not really gonna go and help much with the Black Lives Matter movement. Like, instead of actually going out of your way to go and, like, donate to non-profit organizations that help people of color and stuff like that, you would go and get rid of a movie from your streaming service, or, like, not even helping out to hire more black people in Hollywood, but instead you just want to take out one problematic movie from your streaming service. Like, how is that really gonna help anyone at all, you know? Like, that just makes no sense. But then I saw this Los Angeles Times article, and that's when they would go and mention the fact that they would bring it back, but with a little bit of a description. And that's when I saw this, and I was like, whew, man, thank you, this is much better. Okay, this I like, you know, and especially, like, with the addition of adding in the the description about of acknowledging the racial prejudices, that they are wrong nowadays, that makes it even better. I think that's the perfect way to go and present Gone with the Wind nowadays, that you have to go and add these discussions to go and mention that the racial depictions and the depictions of slavery and Confederacy is just flat out wrong, and they do not resonate with the modern views. I think it's much better. And, maybe you could consider this controversial, but honestly, I feel like Disney should do the same thing with Song of the South as well, that they should actually go and release it on DVD and Blu-ray and put it on Disney Plus, but put up those descriptions, put up those disclaimers and those discussions about how those racial prejudices were wrong then and they are wrong now. I don't believe, honestly, I don't believe in rewriting history. That's just, that's honestly as wrong as, like, being racist as well. Like, that's honestly, rewriting history in a way is more of a racist act in itself. So in a way, like, what Disney is doing with Song of the South is kind of an oxymoron, because, like, censoring Song of the South in general is kind of racist in its own action, instead of ignoring the racist depictions that are in Song of the South in the first place. And it's the same thing with this as well. Like, honestly, I do applaud I do applaud Warner Media and HBO Max for actually doing this action to go and put up the disclaimer as well. Now, I know that there might be some people that might object to this, that might think that, well, I'm not stupid, I know that these things are racist, why would I need a disclaimer? Now, I know, like, yeah, it is pretty, like, if you would go and watch Gone with the Wind nowadays, yeah, it is pretty common knowledge that a lot of the stuff that they are presenting is racist and it is wrong. I mean, like, a movie that the movie that shows the Confederacy in a good way, a movie that would show slavery in a good way, and the way that they would show, like, these racial stereotypes in a positive way, it's just flat out wrong. Like, all this is just flat out wrong. I think it is pretty obvious. But let's be honest, folks, there are still tons of people out there that do need a reminder that racism is wrong. There is still, I mean, like, you've seen how people have been reacting to the Black Lives Matter movement. You've seen how some people think that the black people are more in the wrong, that there are more people that support the police, and especially, like, the cop that murdered George Floyd. Like, they view them more positively than they view black people, and that really is a stigma of racism. Like, there are some people that do need a massive constant reminder that, yes, these prejudices are indeed wrong, that they are not okay, that they do not represent modern American values. So, these people, yeah, there are definitely a lot of people that are still stupid, that still do not understand that these depictions, like, how people view nowadays, it's not okay. It's not, like, we're way past the Civil War. We're way past 1939. So you gotta get out of that mentality, and you gotta realize the modern age, that racism is just not okay. You gotta realize, and the thing is that a lot of these people, like, they're gonna ignore what black people are telling them. They're gonna be ignorant in listening to the message of Black Lives Matter. And if they're not gonna listen to the protesters, if they're not gonna listen to black people, then they might as well listen to big corporations with what they say about them when watching this movie. You know, they might as well. I mean, like, who else are they going to listen? And if they're going to be too stubborn to listen to anyone, then those people would consider to have a mental problem, that there's something wrong with them and they need some serious therapy and some medication. So that's kind of the big thing, is that, yeah, some people might think it's unnecessary to have reminders, but the truth is, some people still need them. That's the thing. The world is stupider than you might think, and especially Americans, not in general, but a lot of white Americans are more stupid than you might actually believe. That's why the stereotype of Americans being dumb is often true, depending on who you ask. So that's honestly the big thing on my take on this, is that honestly, I do support what HBO Max is doing, that hopefully they will bring it back soon, but with that disclaimer, because honestly, I am on the side with them. Like, honestly, like, like what pretty much is said best here is that that movies have to be presented as it was originally created, because otherwise it would be as claiming as these prejudices never existed. So honestly, that's my whole take with the Gone with the Wind story. So with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to go and ask you guys, how do you feel with HBO Max getting rid of Gone with the Wind, but then later bringing it back? Do you feel like it's the right move? Do you think HBO Max is more in the wrong? Let me know what you think. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Isn't this movie an important piece of history? I mean, Hattie McDaniel, the actress for Mammy, was the first African-American to win an Oscar. Looking back at history is important, as we all have made mistakes and we all learn from it. Yes, it is not good to be racist, but they still need to learn from the past. But even some modern-day movies and TV shows still stereotype African-Americans, like Legend of Chamberlain Heights, The Boom Crew, and pretty much any of Michael Bay's movies, like Bad Boys. Well, yeah, exactly. That's why we need the disclaimers, because some people still have not learned that these stereotypes are bad and it's not okay to go and do them. Let's see, what else can we have? I might not have watched Gone with the Wind, but I commend WB in putting a disclaimer when the film comes back to HBO Max. And if I have the latter someday, I might give it a watch. Yeah, I mean, like, we are talking about one of the most important movies of all time. I think it is worth watching at least at some point. But just a bit of a fair warning if you are going to see it, and this is not just the outdated point of views that they would have in the feature, but you gotta keep in mind, this is a long film. Like, some people even say that it's around 4 hours long, so maybe not in one sitting. So, like, you know, try it in parts, maybe. So, just a little bit of a warning there if you are gonna go and watch it. Let's see. This certainly puts the Gone in Gone with the Wind. But seriously, with what's been going on with the war against racism, it makes sense that they go out of their way to rectify, sorry, somehow I can't read that word, out of their way to rectify their mistake. However, I will say that it's strange that Disney isn't thinking too much about it and pretends Song of the South doesn't exist. I'd go on, but I'm sure you'd like to share your 2 cents on it. Well, I'm not gonna do it right now, but later I will. You'll see. Let's see now. We need to be careful about censoring classic movies as well as destroying statues, regardless of how vile those works of people were, as if it's the equivalent of rewriting history, which would technically be espionage. Otherwise, it may eventually start treating the mere mention of history like how some people feel about the mere mention of porn. Yeah, I mean, like, that technically, like, the whole statue situation, that's another subject in particular, because, like, as I said, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, it has pretty much exposed Confederacy as pretty much terrorism in general. And what they are doing right now is not taking down statues of, like, anyone who is considered racist and stuff like that. It's mainly taking down statues of Confederate icons, because basically those are people who are against modern American values. It's not like taking down I think I saw on Twitter, someone said it best, is that there is a difference to honoring people despite of their flaws and honoring people for their flaws. And that's what people are doing when taking down and destroying statues of Confederate people. It's destroying, it's taking down people who were honored for their flaws, not despite of their flaws. Because really, the Confederates have done nothing to help America, so just to lay it out there. Now, what else do we got here? HBO Max can be different from Disney Plus, where removing a classic film that used to be owned by MGM, later Turner, and now WB, instead of putting a disclaimer. They added disclaimers in some Looney Tunes DVD. Well, I mean, have you listened to what I said? Like, they are bringing it back, though. Let's see, what else do we got? Maybe one more before we jump into the next one. I feel like that's fair. Removing it would be erasing history, but adding a disclaimer, hopefully with a black person reading it, will give people a fair reminder. Yeah, you know, that could be good. I mean, like, or maybe it's just not written at all. Well, okay, no, actually, you need someone to read it because, let's be honest, most racist people don't know how to read. Okay, so now with that story done, it is now time that we're gonna go and jump onto our next story. And with the next story that I have here, we are going to jump away from, like, some of the more controversial stuff, and we're going to get into a story that, honestly, it's been a long time since we've had these types of stories. You know, I remember a few months ago when they would be common. They would go and happen all the time, that we would have these things happen, and all the studios were doing it. Like, it was a major trend. Well, I mean, they had no choice because all the cinemas were closing down, but I mean, you know, it was fun telling all those stories about all those things that were happening. So with that said, why don't we go and relive them again, and let's go and talk about the delays of Warner Brothers. Yes, folks, it is time once again for more movies to go and get delayed. And specifically, this will be from Warner Brothers. So what has happened this week? In fact, this actually happened just yesterday from when I am recording this, that Warner Brothers has announced several delays of many of their big movies. And there are some in which their delays are pretty small, like just by a few weeks. And then there are others that would be entirely delayed up to 2022. So let me go and get into my source here on Deadline and read you a little bit of some of the delays that are happening. First off, we have Tenet. And with Tenet, which, if you guys don't know, is the upcoming big Christopher Nolan movie, originally it was supposed to be released in the middle of July, on July 17th. But now it is going to be delayed just 2 weeks further. So now it is only going to be released on July 31st. Okay, so that delay is not necessarily that bad. But then moving forward, we got some movies that they got some really big delays, and I mean like months in delay. And the next one would be Wonder Woman 1984, in which that film was supposed to be coming out in the summer on August 14th. I think beforehand it was supposed to be released this month, but then they had to delay it to August. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to be released in the summer anymore, which now it is going to be coming out on October 2nd. And if you think that is bad, then wait till you see the delay of the fourth Matrix film. Now, with the fourth Matrix film, it is understandable why that one would get a major delay, considering that the production of it has been massively delayed due to the pandemic, and apparently it's only going to be sometime next month where... Whoa, excuse me. Alright, just needed that out of the way. But they stated that it's going to be in next month where they're going to resume production and get back into filming the stuff. But with that said, originally it was supposed to be released on May 21st of next year. But instead, now it will be further delayed to April 1st, 2022. So it's going to be taking a while for this to go and get released. But for that May 21st release date, now that one is going to be occupied by Godzilla vs. Kong, which was supposed to be coming out this year on November 20th, but now will be taking that May 21st release date, which now Godzilla vs. Kong will be heading on face-to-face with Spiral, which is Lionsgate's Saw reboot, which will feature Chris Rock and Samuel Jackson. Other delays that they have announced will be Robert Zemeckis' adaptation of Roald Dahl's Witches, which was supposed to be released on October 9th of 2021, but now, well, okay, honestly, it doesn't have a release date anymore. We don't know when that's going to be coming out. Maybe it'll be in 2022 or something like that, but I don't know. We know that it doesn't have a release date anymore. And also there is the Tom and Jerry live-action animation hybrid movie, which was supposed to come out this year on December 23rd, but now it has been massively delayed to March 5th of 2021, meaning that it's going to be released at the same time as Sony's Ghostbusters Afterlife. So that's pretty much the big thing that's going on here, is that once again Warner Brothers is going to be delaying several of their movies, and that this of course is mainly because of what is happening with the pandemic. That of course it is still going on, despite the fact that recently we are starting to see more and more theaters starting to reopen, that now they are opening cinemas back and people can go and check movies out. I know that it's happening a little bit more in America and in a few places around the world. I don't think Canada has reopened yet. Like, our cinemas are still pretty much closed, and there is no announcement yet on when some of them are going to be reopened. But with that said, it is evident that the pandemic is still going on. It is still going strong. And especially in some places, it is going very, very strong. I'll explain a little bit more in the next story, but the thing is right now is that with the pandemic, there are some places like in America, and especially in like Brazil, Russia, and Mexico, and a few other places where now the pandemic is going stronger than ever. Like, forget the idea of a second wave. Their first wave is still growing bigger and bigger and bigger. So with that said, Warner Brothers is pretty much the first one to notice this, and they realize that this is going to be, like, with what's been happening with the pandemic right now, and even though things are slowly going to be reopened, that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to immediately go and hop into cinemas and go and check out what's the next big movie that's going to be on the big screen. Like, a lot of people are still very hesitant to go and do so. So Warner Brothers is pretty much noticing that this is unfortunately going to be a very weak summer. Like, you're not going to see some major blockbusters happening this summer. So that's why they'd rather be safe and sorry and delay their movies even further. Like, they're going to like, Tenet is one thing. Like, yeah, maybe they could go and sacrifice Tenet for that, like, take the risk for that to be their big summer blockbuster, but they don't want to risk plenty of others as well. Most namely, like with Wonder Woman 1984, they don't want to risk that because they know that they have spent a lot of money on it, and they know that this is a very hyped up film and don't want to miss the opportunity to really capitalize on the fame and success of the first film. So that's why they're going to go and delay it on a date that seems more reasonable and seems more commonplace for superheroes to appear, which is going to be on October 2nd. So hopefully it will have better luck for that one. And because of all these delays, you do see a little bit of a domino effect of what's pretty much been causing, like, oh, because now Matrix 4 has been pushed back, and then that means we're going to put that release date with Godzilla vs. Kong, and then with Tom and Jerry, we're going to push that onto March and stuff like that. once again, we are seeing that starting with 2021, it's going to be extremely crowded. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a prediction. Now, I could be wrong on this, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if starting next week or pretty soon, we are going to be hearing a lot more delays happening in order to accustom with the new release dates that are going to be happening. I feel like there's going to be even more delays that will be occurring with several feature films. Like, now that Warner Brothers has done it, probably it wouldn't be too long until we're going to hear about Paramount doing the same thing, or Sony doing the same thing, or even Disney doing the same thing, or maybe even Universal as well. Who knows? I feel like this could start a chain effect where we are going to see more movies getting delayed, and 2021 will be massively shifted once again. Like, maybe it's not going to be a major one like last time when we had all the major companies having their delays all in 1 week, but honestly, I feel like this could be the start of something, because if there's going to be one company that's going to go and delay several of their big motion pictures, then you're going to see others follow suit in order for their films to have a better place for it to go and shine. So honestly, I don't know. I feel like overall with this could be the start of something. But then again, I feel like Warner Brothers is being smart on this, because they are noticing that the pandemic is not necessarily leaving anytime soon, and that there are places like Brazil, the United States, Russia, and many, many more that are having it very badly. And that even with cinemas nowadays, even though some of them are reopening, some of them are like in serious financial troubles, where there are places like in China, apparently there are going to be thousands of cinemas that are going to be closing due to the pandemic, and that it really screwed them over. Or another prominent example is AMC. Apparently the AMC cinemas, like, they are very much nearing bankruptcy, and they're very much nearing towards death. Like, they're pretty much at death's door at that point. So they know that it's going to take a lot of time for cinemas to reopen, and for the movie industry and for the theater industry to get back to normal. It's going to take much longer than the summer alone, and it could possibly take much longer than 2020 alone. So that's the big thing that really is emphasized, and kudos to Warner Brothers being the first one to go and notice this. All right, so, and on a side note, apparently, someone even mentioned that apparently the next James Bond movie, No Time to Die, got moved up to November 20th. So, okay, that's a little small addition. So, that's MGM's thing, though. MGM and I think partly Universal is working with them as well on that. But anyways, that's pretty much the big thing about the news, is regarding all these release dates that are being changed. So, with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask, what do you all think about Warner Brothers delaying more of their movies even further? Are there certain movies that you're upset that have been delayed? Do you think it's for the best for these movies to be delayed? What do you think of all this? Let me know what you think. Okay, let's see. I was glad that these delays just disappeared, as it was a sign that the pandemic was slowing to a halt. But with this news, I'm now having some concerns. But I will say that this is for the best, and I do hope that I'm able to see them as soon as possible. Just as long as cinemas don't decide, Scoop was a pretty big hit on VOD, huh? Well, girl, bye! Okay, let's see. Oh, someone is massively upset. Oh, look at this. No! Godzilla vs. Kong delayed! No! Okay, I'm cool. I'm glad that they are delayed. No need to rush on production or releases, especially with all that virus out on the loose. It's a little less than before, but it's still a big problem. Maybe 2021 will be better. Heck, it might be a lucky year for me. I mean, with every decade of the year that ends with one, like 2001 and 2011, they've been the luckiest year for me. Yeah, who knows? Maybe you'll be lucky. Like, maybe you'll be lucky with opportunities outside, like, with the pandemic still going on. Like, trust me, there are some people out there that would even say that that with 2020, they thought it's going to be their year and stuff like that, and well, look at what happened. But then again, like, even with this pandemic, like, you could still go and look on the bright side, and like, you could still have great opportunities and still say that this is definitely your year. Like, I'll say this right now without going into specifics, but honestly, like, I've had some very big milestone opportunities that I've been offered this year. So honestly, like, yeah, there have been some bad stuff so far in 2020, but there's also been some very good stuff for me in 2020 this year. So that's just something I would like to go and mention about it. So just because there's been a lot of bad stuff doesn't mean some great stuff can happen to you as well. Let's see now. Really not too surprised this happened. I'm very disappointed that Wonder Woman 1984 got delayed. I do feel better that the reason they put it in October because they want to try to catch that same success that Joker did. Also, I have a feeling Disney is next to delay the Mulan remake and New Mutants again. Yeah, who knows, man? But yeah, like, October seems to be a pretty strong year now for superhero movies. It seems to be like really like a new foundation for superhero films to go and have some significance. Like, not just with Joker, but really Sony really played a significant part on it because of Venom. So October could be a new release date where you will find some superhero films. I mean, like, Sony touched on it and got some major success. Warner Brothers so far touched on it and got some success. Don't be surprised if sometime soon you will hear about a Marvel movie to be released in October. That could possibly happen. Maybe not sometime soon, but I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel would want to try to oh, excuse me. But if Marvel would want to try to go and have their hands on the little October superhero trend. Let's see now. What else do we got here? I think it's a great idea for Warner Brothers to delay their movies, that they could put more work towards them and make them good, and actually put some thought into some of their movies and make them the best movies that they could show me. They could show the real potential to be really good if some thought was put into them. So hopefully they take all the time they need to make sure these movies do live down in history as some of the greats. And you know what? Honestly, like, holy crap, dude, you're doing something beautiful here because you're doing something that most people probably should do, and that is looking on the bright side of this. And yeah, you know what? That could possibly be true. Like, why not look at the bright side that at least with the delays, it gives these people more time to really give that good polish on these features. So you never know, man. All right, so I'll go and read one more before we go and move on. Let's see here. It's sad that Warner Brothers movies are getting delayed, but it's for the best. But Warner Brothers should rethink about Tom and Jerry's new release date because it is now opening a week before Raya and the Last Dragon. Well, I mean, March right now in general is going to be stupidly crowded because, like this article even stated, it's also going to be faced with apparently the new release date is going to be at the same time as Sony's Ghostbusters movie, and you never know if that's going to be a major hit. But like, it's not just that as well, but there's going to be plenty of other movies in March of that year that's going to be very significant with some major releases. Not just with Ghostbusters, but also, like you mentioned, Raya and the Last Dragon, but also Sony has another major movie that they want to release, which is going to be the Morbius film. So there's going to be a lot of stuff in there as well, and this is why I mentioned that there is a possibility that we will see more delays, because there will be some months, like in March 2021, that will get way too crowded, and there are going to be companies that might have to do something about it, like maybe push Morbius onto April or something. Who knows, but I feel like this could probably be something that, don't be surprised if we're going to hear more delays coming in the future. Okay, so with that said, it is now time that we're going to jump on to the next story, and what I have here is actually going to be more theme park news. Yes, and with this theme park news in general, well, I've already talked about plenty of the reopenings of some of the major ones. I've already talked about many of the Florida attractions, many of the Florida theme parks like Universal Orlando, Legoland Florida, SeaWorld Orlando, and of course Walt Disney World. But now we're going to go and head down to California, where we are going to go and hear about the reopening of Disneyland. Yes, Disney has officially announced their plan of what they're going to do in terms of the reopening of the Disneyland Resort. And they're going to go and take it step by step. Now, the first thing that they are going to go and reopen is going to be the downtown Disney District. And that's the little area that's mainly based on shopping and restaurants and other dining experiences and other forms of activities that are outside the parks and stuff like that. So they're going to go and open that one first, and they're going to be opening it on July 9th. But then, that you got to keep in mind though, that's just going to be the appetizer of this. But then there's going to be the main course, which is going to be the actual theme parks themselves. Disneyland and Disney California Adventure, in which they are going to be opening those on July 17th. And that's going to be a major one because this is actually going to be opening right on time as Disneyland's 65th anniversary. So, of course, this was all intentional. They got it, so that's why they have to pick that specific date to go and reopen it on such a major milestone. And then finally, the last thing that they are going to go and reopen for that month is going to be the Grand Californian Hotel and Spa and the Paradise Pier Hotel, in which they are going to be opening it a little bit less than a week later on July 23rd. However, at the same time, while they are going to be reopening these, they are also going to go and reopen with some enhanced health and safety measures. Now, they have stated that they will go and bring more information onto those pretty soon, but they have already declared some of the main stuff that they are going to do as well, which will include mandatory masks, social distancing, and of course, some major limited capacity, and of course, a lot of cleaning. So that's going to be something for the cast members to do that they have to massively prioritize, like to make sure everything is spick and span, everything has to be clean no matter what, like every hour on the hour and stuff like that. But also, they are going to go and enhance the ways of how you can enter Disneyland and how you can go and make a reservation to get into it. And this one I will go and read from my source here at the Disney Parks blog, in which it states here, Because theme park capacity will be significantly limited to comply with governmental requirements and promote physical distancing, the Disneyland Resort will manage attendance through a new theme park reservation system that will require all guests, including annual pass holders, to obtain a reservation for park entry in advance. Theme park reservations will be subject to availability. More details about this new reservation system will be available soon. At this time, there will also be a temporary pause on new ticket sales and annual passport sales and renewals. Additional details will be available soon. Please check Disneyland.com for the most current information. So that's pretty much the big thing, is that pretty soon they will be reopening Disneyland. But there is a major catch to all this. And of course, while there are some people out there that are pretty excited that, hooray, Disneyland is going to be reopening, now the Californians can go and celebrate 65 magical years of Disneyland and all that kind of stuff. Okay, there is a major catch though. Let's go ahead and talk into detail about the pandemic, specifically with what's going on in the United States. Because right now, while there are some states that are improving, where the curve is finally going down, especially in New York, which is great to see because they have been the state that have been hit the hardest, there have still been plenty of other areas, plenty of other states in which now things are actually getting worse. And there are some noteworthy states where it's becoming more and more problematic with the pandemic. And there are places like Arizona, Georgia, Alabama, I think Kentucky as well. Maybe Kentucky, maybe not. But also, Texas, especially. Florida is another one, so don't expect so this is actually going to be some serious trouble for the Orlando theme parks, and especially California. In fact, unfortunately, the thing is with California is that right now the pandemic is being it's pretty much at its worst. In fact, several of these states are at their worst, because I know that there are some places around the world that are talking about the fears of the second wave that could be coming. But then again, there are some places like those states in which they never really have a second wave. Like, the thing is, to have a second wave, you gotta have your first wave to go down. You gotta have the curve go down. Right now, they're just going through one massive wave in which the numbers are just going higher and higher and higher and higher. That's the big thing. And the thing is, right now with California, yeah, right now they really are at their worst in terms of the pandemic. Now, the thing is with Disneyland, though, is that, yeah, in a way, I do understand why they have to go and reopen, because let's be honest, it's pretty much inevitable, and I think it was pretty much in the plans all this time that they want Disneyland to go and open for the 65th anniversary. And as much as Disney can go and, like, do all the precautions as possible, including the limited capacity, which I have heard with what they want to do with Walt Disney World, they're only going to do, like, they're just going to limit to like 20% to 30% of their maximum capacity that they could go and handle. But in this case here with Disneyland, honestly, with how things are with California, and honestly, this is not just with California and stuff like that, considering that Florida is also doing even worse as well. I'm just going to say right now, don't be surprised if these theme parks, like with their reopenings, even with all the precautions they're taking, I think it's honestly going to be temporary. Like, I think there's going to be, like, a second time that they have no choice but to shut down, or that their governors or that their senators have to demand that these theme parks have to shut down because things are even more out of control with the pandemic, so they cannot take any more risk with infecting more lives. And this is especially the case with Florida, considering that they have a high rate of old people there, like people over 60 and over 70. Like, do they really want to take the risk to reopen stuff with the pandemic still around? Yeah, that's kind of the big thing. So, now, honestly, with the future, honestly, like, yeah, that would be the precaution thing, but honestly, with the way that things are going worse with the pandemic, I really don't know. And especially with America right now, things are going extremely unpredictable, because you never know with these governors and with these politicians, especially nowadays, especially the Republican ones that are so eager and are so desperate to reopen it. And that's the thing. Yeah, while you got some people that are so desperate to say all lives matter, you know for a fact that it's an entire lie, because when they would say all lives matter, those are the exact same people in which a few weeks ago with the pandemic, they would go and be ready to sacrifice their grandparents in order to survive the economy. That's the thing that I want to mention, is that especially with these politicians, especially the Republican ones, they value the economy more so than people's lives. So you never know if they really want to be in the mood to actually go and re-shut down these businesses and stuff like that. Like, even if there is a second wave, you never know if they just don't care about the second wave happening and just let it continue and just let the pandemic thrive. So honestly, this is why I feel like I don't know what's going to happen with the reopening of these parks, because so far, summer is going to be absolute hell for certain states. At least it's not New York. Like, New York had its share, but now it's going to be time for some of the other ones like California and Florida and Texas and Arizona and stuff like that. So it's going to be very dangerous for them, and the summertime, like, you never know, and especially the fact that it is the summertime, because that's the time when people really want to go outside and they really want to spend their time with outdoor activities, and not to mention the freaking 4th of July, when everybody wants to get together, have a barbecue, and light up fireworks and stuff like that. it's going to be it's going to be a very dangerous time, especially in the United States. So really, it's hard to know what's going to be happening with these theme parks. Like, maybe the governors will demand them to stay open during this time. Maybe they will have to reclose them, but honestly, I just don't know. I just feel like right now that, yeah, I kind of get what Disney's doing because they kind of have to, because, yeah, like, their business has been seriously suffering because of the pandemic, especially in terms of the theme park department. But overall, it's just... Right now, things are going really bad with the pandemic, especially in the States, especially, uh, excuse me, especially in the areas where they would have these prominent theme parks like California and Florida. So honestly, I really don't know, but I'm just going to say right now that I would not be surprised if these reopenings are just going to be temporary and that they will have to quickly shut them down soon in order to keep the pandemic in control. So, with that said and done, yeah, it's probably a little bit of a short piece that I have done here, but, you know, I just wanted to go and express my concerns. So with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all, what do you think about Disneyland reopening right now, especially in time for its 65th anniversary? Do you think it's a good idea for Disneyland to do so? Do you think that they should still close it down even further? Let me know what you all think now. Okay. Let's see. Although I understand that Disney had to reopen theme parks for the anniversary, this won't last long, and considering I live in California, Sacramento, reopening places will only get worse and have the virus last longer. So, okay, so at least it's nice to know that we do have a confirmation from an actual Californian that it might not necessarily be a great idea. Let's see now. Someone is asking, like, can we not have a 4th of July this year? It'd be weird celebrating a country that betrayed its people. Dude. Dude. Oh, boy. You said it, not me. Oh, man. Yeah, honestly, like, I think this is the perfect time to put on the Eric Andre meme of, like, how can you say something controversial yet so brave? Okay. Oh, there's one good one that I see here. I said it before in the previous podcast about the reopening parks, but I'll say it again. Please be careful and wash your hands. I'm just repeating that because I know for a fact that during these reopenings, there is going to be at least one clueless lad who does not get the memo. He might not do all the cleanliness requirements, and he might be enjoying himself while simultaneously but unwillingly do something dirty. They either might have to kick him out immediately or close yet again. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, even though as much as Disney will take precaution to make sure everyone can be safe, including having mandatory masks, you know that there's going to be some people that are going to be too stupid to follow a few of them. Like, you know, that's the thing, though, is that as much as we can control cleanliness, we cannot control stupidity. And that's, like, part of the real problem why we often see the coronavirus spreading. It's not out of, it's not because of the virus itself, but it's mainly because of ignorant and stupid people. Let's see now. What else do we have here? Okay, let's see. I'll be honest, as glad as I am the parks are reopening, is it really the right time? I mean, the pandemic shows no signs of slowing down, and we have yet to have our second wave. And besides, I think we've already established that Big Donnie can't leave the country to save his life because, to paraphrase Ian from Onward, he acts like he knows what he's doing, but he doesn't have a clue, and that's because he's a screw-up. That's an understatement, honestly, dude. Yeah, like, that's honestly the big concern. It's like, yeah, it's nice to see them reopening, but is it the right thing to do, especially in this current situation where it looks like some states are going to have the pandemic worse than during the springtime? I don't know. Let's see. This is actually a good idea, what Disney Krieg... what the fridge? This is actually a good idea, what Disney... Disney might try different ideas to see what works and maybe use them as experiments they have on other theme parks as long as they manage themselves as well wisely. I'm fine. I'm fine. But if they don't bother to do the right thing, that they should close immediately. Okay, so basically what you're trying to say is that it might be a good idea in terms of experimenting and stuff like that. But the thing is, dude, is that they already have Shanghai Disneyland. That was the point of reopening Shanghai Disneyland, is to fully experiment to see how they could move forward with the pandemic going on. You know, like, they were confident with what they have done at Shanghai, so now they got the confidence that they could do the same thing at Walt Disney World and in Disneyland. So honestly, with these reopenings, it's just, I don't know, man. I just honestly don't know. Let's see now. I really do not like this idea. Given how California is a hotspot, it could be way too dangerous. Although I do have a feeling Disney is going to delay the opening of Avengers Campus and delay it till November, right on time with the release of Black Widow. Yeah, they could do that. That could be an option right now. I mean, we don't have much updates in terms of what is happening with the Avengers Campus, so there is a strong possibility where that one could get delayed. Or I wouldn't even be surprised that they might even delay its opening to 2021. That could be a possibility. Let's see now. Disneyland is opening again, kinda. I mean, let's be honest. There would be a case where the government would demand a shutdown anytime, and it's pretty dangerous too, since people don't want to sit in their house under a fan, an air conditioner, and just want to taste the sun. Better pray to God you don't taste COVID-19 air. Make sure you keep your mask on, people. Oh, trust me, with Disney, they will make sure of that. That's going to be like one of the top priorities, is that everyone wears a godforsaken mask. I'll go read it one more before we go and jump on to the next story. Let's see. I think it's a good idea that they are taking baby steps, but I want it to be mandatory for people wearing masks, which, yes, they are doing that, so we can keep people from getting sick as long as possible, but we need to eventually get back to normalcy, and baby steps are a good way to start. Okay, so there are several ways to look at this, which is true. There are some people that are more positive about it, but honestly, I think this is going to be more of a wait-and-see kind of thing, but I would lie if I said that I'm not worried about this. And so, with that said, it is now time that we are going to jump onto the grand finale. And with this grand finale, we are going to be taking several stories that we got, and we're going to combine them into one. Then we're going to take a few elements from one story, from another story, and even from this story, and we're going to go and combine them all together for a very fascinating grand finale. And we're going to be still sticking around at the Disney parks, as we are going to be talking about Splash Mountain. Now, there is no official announcement as to what's happening with Splash Mountain, but it's actually regarding what Disney fans want from Splash Mountain, and mainly because of the fact that they want to go and re-theme the ride. Because the big thing is that if you guys don't know Splash Mountain, it is actually based on the highly controversial 1946 movie Song of the South, where it does feature the animated characters that are featured there, like Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear, where the ride would go and retell the stories of Uncle Remus. However, considering how controversial this movie is, and considering that we are in the height of the Black Lives Matter movement of this year at least, so far fans are now demanding if Disney would go and completely re-theme Splash Mountain, where it no longer features any of the Song of the South elements. Now, there are some people that are demanding maybe they could go and re-theme it to Zootopia, considering that they could keep a lot of the animatronic animals in there. Or maybe they could go and re-theme it to Pocahontas, because it's still a log flume ride. But then again, re-theming it to Pocahontas would just keep the same problems again. But then, there is one prominent idea that some people have, and so far it is sticking, as probably the most popular idea and the most appealing idea that people have. And that is regarding The Princess and the Frog. Yes, the 2009 hand-drawn animated Disney film, in which a lot of people think that it would be a beautiful idea if they would go and re-theme it to just The Princess and the Frog. And there are several people that thought up of several creative ideas of how they could go and do the re-theming, where they would keep the layout of the ride, but replace everything to fit more with the narrative of The Princess and the Frog, where they would go and include characters like Tiana, Naveen, Louis, Mama Odie, and of course, Dr. Facilier. In fact, if you go on Twitter, there is this one person by the name of Frederick Chambers, actually created a whole thread where he pretty much created this entire narrative where you would just read along and imagine yourself in the Splash Mountain ride, but all themed to The Princess and the Frog, that would feature a lot of the songs and would feature a lot of the characters that are in there and what would be happening. In fact, the idea got so popular that there is currently a change.org petition that has been getting a lot of attention. And so far, it's been getting quite a few significant signatures. In fact, a lot of signatures, where if you go in there right now, here, let me just go and refresh that. Here, let's see if this has been updated, where so far, the signatures are demanding for 25,000 in order to go and get Disney's attention, in order to give this to the Walt Disney Company. But so far, as I am reading this, they got over 19,000 signatures so far. So this does seem like a pretty popular idea that a lot of people seem to, like, they would want to go and get behind. So that's pretty much the big idea. Now, we don't have any confirmations from Disney, but that's what fans are currently demanding, that they would go and re-theme Splash Mountain from Song of the South to The Princess and the Frog in light of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I'm gonna go and start things off by expressing my opinion on this. Like, if I would want to see Splash Mountain be re-themed to The Princess and the Frog. I'll just have that out of the way, first of all. And personally, as someone who does really like Splash Mountain, honestly, I feel very conflicted on this. I really am, because on one hand, we are talking about not only one of the most popular, but also one of the most iconic rides. Whoa, excuse me. But anyways, we are talking about one of the most popular and one of the most beloved attractions at the Disney parks. Like, this thing is equal, like, the thing is, right now, Splash Mountain is currently equally as iconic as something like Pirates of the Caribbean or the Haunted Mansion. You know, it's something that, it has pretty much established itself as, like, one of the Disney rides that other Disney rides want to be, and especially with the way that they've built it is absolutely beautiful, and it's one of the very few things in this world that's actually keeping the stories of Uncle Remus alive. Like, this is honestly the most popular iteration of the tales of Brer Rabbit, and featuring other characters like Brer Fox and Brer Bear, and the way that they've constructed it's honestly so beautiful despite its controversial origins. But on the other hand, honestly, maybe it is for the best that we would see a re-theme of Song of the South, mainly because it would solve the problem of the most hypocritical thing that Disney has done. And it's the fact of not showing Song of the South, that they refuse to ever show Song of the South ever, and yet they still heavily want to go and capitalize on Song of the South. Like, holy crap. You go to the Disney parks, and it is so hypocritical with the way they are trying to promote Splash Mountain and the way that they are trying to advertise characters such as Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear, and really marketing them, like selling so much merchandise and really trying to associate them with Splash Mountain. In fact, that's kind of like their big mission, is that they really want to rewrite history and rewrite the narrative to make it seem like Brer Rabbit is an original theme park character. Like, they're trying to twist the narrative where the characters and the songs from there, like Zippity Doo Dah and Laughing Place and all that kind of stuff, that they all come from Splash Mountain. That they're really twisting the narrative where they're trying to say that Brer Rabbit is a character that they've invented in the same way that they've created Figment or the Dog with Keys or the Hitchhiking Ghosts. They want to try to really twist that narrative, and it's honestly wrong and very hypocritical of them to try to do so. So at least it would go and really solve that problem. So honestly, that's just my opinion on this, and yeah, keep in mind, like when I do express my opinion on these things, like with with stuff like with the Gone with the Wind story, or with this story in general with Song of the South and Splash Mountain, keep in mind that this is coming from a white person, and I do apologize if a lot of this might sound like white-splaining. I mean, if you guys know that, like, I am doing my best to try to be an ally to the Black Lives Matter movement and be an ally to people of color and to minority groups as well, so it might sound ignorant, like maybe some of the things I say might sound ignorant, and I do apologize, but if there are some things that I need to be educated a little bit more in terms of like these kinds of things, then please let me know. That it would actually help me out, because I want to go and improve as an ally and stuff like that. But as I am saying, that I personally do feel very hypocritical, because it is a very iconic attraction, and the way that they've built it up is just so amazing. It's like one of the best Disney rides out there, and even for me, like, I personally love it, and I'm not that big of a fan of thrill rides, honestly. But then again, it would go and solve a major problem for Disney's hypocrisy with the way that they are treating Song of the South and its characters. So with that out of the way, now I want to, like, that's just my opinion though, but now I want to go and try to think realistically. And I'm just going to say, as much as people are demanding it because we are still at the heat of the moment with the Black Lives Matter movement, I think realistically, I don't think there's any way possible. I don't think Disney will ever go and re-theme Song of the South. Maybe they will in the future, but honestly, I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon. Like, honestly, like, even if Disney would be in a state that they would reconsider it, like, we would be long past, like, this movement. We would be, like, people would go and move on from the Black Lives Matter movement. But the thing is, or at least momentarily. But as I was saying, the thing is, the reason why I don't believe Disney would actually go and do this is because of several reasons. And number one is because of the hypocrisy, the way that Disney is trying to capitalize on the characters and the songs and stuff like that. Because, let's be honest, songs like Zippity Doo-Dah are highly popular. And with characters like Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear, they are still doing some very strong business with them. Like, the merchandise is still going strong. Like, people are, like, these merchandises would often go and fly off the shelves. So it's not really something that anytime soon Disney would go and completely take out, because these characters are still highly profitable for them. They're still highly iconic. And as bad as it seems that Disney is trying to rewrite history, in a way, it is kind of working, where there are a lot of people nowadays that do have personal attachments to not just Splash Mountain, but with the characters, where when they would think of songs like Zippity Doo-Dah, or when they would think of characters like Brer Rabbit, they would first think of Splash Mountain before even ever thinking about Song of the South. So that's one major reason why they wouldn't go and do this. And also, number two, and this is probably a major reason, Disney is not really in a financial position where they could go and do it. Because you gotta keep in mind that the pandemic the pandemic has hit them hard, to the point that they have lost billions of dollars in terms of revenue. So it's not necessarily like they have the money to go and do so. And on top of that, retheming it is going to be expensive. It would actually be extremely pricey to go and completely retheme something like Splash Mountain, where they would go and replace it with new and like top of the line animatronics of characters like Lewis or Tiana or Naveen and stuff like that. It would just be way too pricey in order to go and do so. And not to mention that you got to keep in mind there are several Splash Mountains around the world. It's not just in, not just in Disneyland, but we're also talking about Walt Disney World and also in Tokyo Disneyland as well. So it's going to be way too expensive to go and try to replace all the Splash Mountains, let alone it would cost them millions of dollars just to retheme on one. And on top of that, and I guess I could go and also include this as the third reason, where Disney has way too much on their plate already. Like, they're already working on several major projects, bigger projects even, that they have to go and take care of first. Like, Epcot, for example, is going to have a massive reboot that they want to go and do. And then there is also, like, at Disneyland Paris, there's also going to be another Avengers campus that they want to do there, along with a Frozen-themed area, like they want to do an entire Arendelle, and not to mention that there is also Tokyo Disneyland, where they also want to do a massive expansion on their Fantasyland, where they want to add elements of Beauty and the Beast, of Tangled, and of Peter Pan. So there are some massive expansions that they want to do, and like not just rides, but like full-on themed lands that they want to do, and not to mention like many of the attractions that they have in the works that they want to try out. So already they have their hands full. So unfortunately, in a realistic sense, because they already have major projects in the works already that's going to take them years to develop, considering that they don't have much money to begin with, and the fact that they still want to try to go and capitalize on the Uncle Remus characters, unfortunately, as much as people are demanding to do so, and as much as people are, like, riled up mainly because of the Black Lives Matter movement, I don't think Disney is going to be doing this. I think Splash Mountain, honestly, is going to be staying as it is, as much as fans are going to be demanding it. But I will say this, though, even though it's very unlikely that The Princess and the Frog is going to take the place of Splash Mountain, honestly, I feel like it would actually be a very epic idea for a Princess and the Frog ride in general. Like, screw retheming an old attraction and stuff like that. Like, the Princess and the Frog would be the kind of thing that would deserve to have its own attraction. I think that would be a great idea. I mean, you already got a lot of materials to work with in the first place, but honestly, I think it would be fantastic to see the Princess and the Frog actually be used as an attraction. I think there is a lot of potential to be done there, especially like with the whole Bayou theme, especially with the New Orleans theme. So like it would probably be a great new addition to New Orleans Square at Disneyland, and not to mention like with Dr. Facilier and his friends from the other side. So honestly, I am behind you that like a Princess and the Frog ride would be an epic idea. It would be a beautiful idea, but honestly with Splash Mountain, yeah, don't expect that to change anytime soon. Alright, so with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I want to go and ask you all, what do you think of the idea that fans are proposing about retheming Splash Mountain to something like The Princess and the Frog? Do you think it's a great idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Do you support this kind of thing? Do you object to it? Let me know what you all think. Okay, so, let's see now. If this does happen, I hope only California Splash is changed. It keeps the fulfillment of Disney parks constantly changing, and it's still a good compromise of not getting rid of the attraction entirely, with the superior version of Splash in Florida being kept. A similar scenario is like Tower of Terror and Mission Breakout. Plus, it's located better in New Orleans Square spot, that Florida's Frontierland spot. And Tony Goldmark said, don't put all your eggs in both towers. That is actually a good point, actually. Like, yeah, maybe it would be too much to go and do like all of them, but maybe just one of them, like in, like just at Disneyland, that could be a potential idea. So, you know, it could be, at that point, honestly, I feel like that would be the moment where you would have best of both worlds, where, yeah, Disneyland might have to change things up, where they would go and do a Splash Mountain, but then in Florida, where they would do a Princess and the Frog Splash Mountain, but then in Florida, they would still keep it as a Song of the South Splash Mountain. I honestly, like, yeah, I could see the idea going well with that. That, that could be a strong potential, actually. Honestly, that I might not be object to it as much, and that does seem like a more realistic idea. Let's see now. I know it's common to suggest Pocahontas or Princess and the Frog, but I have a few suggestions, so hear me out. Why not a zany and wacky a wacky log flume ride with Phineas and Ferb, or maybe a ride based on Onward where you ride on a cheese puff. And my final suggestion, perhaps a ride based on Moana. $1 million idea right there. I know. Oh, dude, that's true. Oh my god, I did think of that actually. That once did cross my mind actually. That like, if you want to go and retheme Splash Mountain or something like that, why not go with Moana? That would be that would actually be a pretty clever idea. Like, make the whole splash thing, but like make it a volcano or something like that. I don't know. Honestly, I feel like that. Because the whole thing with Splash Mountain, the main thing is the water. So why not make it like a whole water theme with Moana? That would actually be a great idea there. Honestly, I don't know. I wouldn't oppose to that. Let's see now. I'm on the side that we should keep Splash Mountain as it is. Despite Disney trying to ignore Song of the South, Disney does actually seem to care about it due to not just Splash Mountain, but also other parts of it, like the songs and the animal characters. Not to mention, despite featuring black characters, Tiana and Naveen does spend most of the Princess and the Frog being frogs, so I am not sure that this will solve the racism problem. I guess that is kind of like another controversial subject in itself, where, like, even though it does feature black main characters, they're not featured as black characters in the first place, where it's just them as frogs for most of the time, where like you bear, like, it's not even half the time where characters like Tiana or Naveen are mainly spent as their human selves. They're just as frogs. So yeah, you might have a point there. That's like another subject of debate in this whole discussion here. Let's see now. I love The Princess and the Frog. It's my all-time favorite Disney princess movie. It might be because I have a crush on Tiana, but seriously, why replace Splash Mountain with either Princess and the Frog or Zootopia? It's about as baffling as the Tiki Room being replaced with a Moana attraction. Heck, I remember when the Brer characters guest appeared in the House of Mouse back in 2001 and 2003 on TV. I'm surprised that those protesters never demanded this during 2013 or 2016's Black Lives Matter movement. Well, the thing is that the thing is that we live in a different time. You got to keep in mind that 2020 is certainly different from 2013 and 2016, and even, like, debatably, the Black Lives Matter movement is at its biggest right now, even more than in 2013 and in 2016, so just keep in mind with that. Okay, let's see. My main thought is to never do it. Kudos to the idea, it's amazing, but I just been there last year, and it's really a fun ride for the first time being on. Why change it? I did even wanted to see the movie Song of the South, and I would say that the ride is a great substitution. Plus nothing is like Zippity Doo-Dah or It's a Small World. You get it, just don't. Okay, so there are some people who are opposed to this. I'll go and read one more here. Okay, let's see. Remember when people thought Disney was a monopoly? Well, just knowing their financial strains right now, thanks to the virus, proves it wrong. They really can't afford to just change a well-known attraction, much like how Universal can't afford to dump Harry Potter World because Rowling is an idiot. Plus, changing all the merch with the Uncle Remus characters and t-shirt, toys, figures, etc. Yeah, that's the realist side of me that's trying to make a point on this. And with that said, I think that should conclude today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. So let me just say thank you all so much for watching, and whoo boy, what a big episode it is. But hopefully, we still maintain the fun-filled aspect of this. So I just would like to say thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, see you later, dudes.